If you're feeling bad for yourself, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling negative, like, you need to serve other people. That's how you get to the place of happiness. And so I think there's these opportunities that God gives us. And unfortunately, we're in a world where there's a lot of bad. There is a lot of negative. And, but honestly, like, I think I'm more hopeful than ever. Yeah. I think it's so easy to find the good and find good people. And I see it everywhere, every single day.
Everyone you meet every single day is fighting a battle you may know nothing about. We're all in the process of overcoming. I'm Justin Wren, and my story has been heard by millions of people through my book, my TED Talk, podcast interviews, TV shows, professional fighting, and my foundation, Fight for the Forgotten. I believe we are all overcomers if we choose to overcome. We all have the option. I've been given the opportunity to overcome childhood trauma, sexual abuse, immense bullying, depression, suicidal ideation, substance use disorder, and I am a 2-time suicide survivor. We are here to have conversations with some of the greatest minds of our time. Get ready to be inspired and to receive the tools and game plan to win this fight called life. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself. You, me, we have overcome 100% of our darkest days. I'm not done yet, and neither are you. This is your invitation to overcome. All right. Jimmy Rex,
dude,
my man.
Justin, good to be here, man.
I'm so excited you're here. I guess a little bit of an intro that at least I know is you're an entrepreneur, you're an investor, you have the Jimmy Rex Show, the podcast, you're 400 episodes in.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, just about. And then you've wrote a couple books.
Yep.
Best-selling author. And now I'm excited because you're wearing the shirt, and I wanted to talk about that. Where
we are the they.
We are the they. Yeah, we are the they. And that's basically about being the hero of your own story.
Yeah, it's
I love that premise.
That concept, of like, well, and I will get into it, but yeah, like, people always wait for somebody else to step up and do something. It's like, no, there is no they. Like, we are the they. That's the whole concept of it.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And then one of your books is You End Up Where You're Headed.
Yep.
And that's basically about, well, I mean, I'll let you say it.
Well, it's the premise of the whole book is the subtitle is The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. And on their deathbeds,
I was going to say that. That's so good.
Yeah, on their deathbeds, nobody regrets the decisions they made, the things they did. They regret the things they didn't do, those dreams that died with them. And the whole premise is die with memories, not dreams. Like, go live your life. And at the end of our lives, the quality and the quantity of life that we've lived is going to come down to those amazing moments that we had. And so the more you can stack those, the more you can get out of your comfort zone, the more fulfilling life you're gonna have. Yeah, and for those listening, we just pulled that up on the YouTube or the video where you can see that. But you can go get You End Up Where You're Heading with Jimmy Rex, and would love you to support that book because that sounds powerful. I mean, what do you think is one of the biggest hidden dangers of living a safe life? Well, and it's interesting because biologically, back in the day, I mean, our DNA, our hardwiring was you had to stay colonized. You had to stay together. You had to build walls around you. That's how you stayed safe. And so, I think a lot of people have that DNA still where it's like, it's to stay alive because we're all, trying to replicate and survive at all times, right? And to do that, you had to settle in, anchor in, huddle together, whatever, play it safe. But now it's the opposite. I mean, it's, I use the beginning of the book. I talk about the guy that's driving to the office and he's stuck in traffic. Then he gets to to his office. He sits in his cubicle and he's eating his food from a sack that day and just whatever, just this mundane life where you're just slow death and just nothing happening. And then you get to the end of your life and it's like, what did you do? And so I think the biggest danger that you have is that you miss the opportunity to do so much more. You miss that opportunity to leave your mark, to inspire other people. Because truly, I think the best leaders, the best you can hope for in a life is to inspire and lead other people, to create other leaders and to create a movement similar to like what you've done, where you go out and you inspire other people. That's where you really get to have huge impact. Yeah. And for me, I mean, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of like not living, I'm afraid of just not having those experiences and getting to the end and wondering what could have been. Yeah, absolutely. And how important do you think, I mean, I know you think travel is really important. You've been to 91 plus countries. Yep. And I think, so I grew up here, Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth. And I remember being in school and I was very fortunate. My parents were entrepreneurs and, or had a sports photography company. And they were like the
I don't know, the official photographers for like the Dallas Mavericks and the Cowboys and the Rangers,
Cool.
but also like the Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos. And so I got to be around professional sports, knowing I want to be a professional athlete, but also I got to travel out of the state. And since I was from a little country town outside of Fort Worth, there were so many kids that would be like, why do I ever need to leave Texas? And I just never understood that, because there were actually a lot of kids that didn't leave the state. We got everything here. Texas is the best, you know? And I'm just like, wow, you're selling yourself short. But I was thinking that at an early age, like 7th and 8th grade. And you've been so many places. And so that means you've seen so many cultures.
Well, yeah, and I think it's the growth that you get, right? Like for me, every time I travel and I experience a new culture, I experience a new experience, your mind is open to new ideas. And it's like, for me, the example I give is my whole life I was looking at this map, right? And you're like, okay, this is the whole world. This is like your Texas guys, right? They're like, okay, I see the whole world. It's right here. It's my Texas. And that's all you know. And then all of a sudden you start traveling, you start experiencing other cultures, religions, people. And it's like, yo, back up. There's more to the map. And you step back and the map just opens up to everything. And there's just so much more. And there's so much more beauty. And there's so much more, we're afraid of things that we don't know. And so a lot of times if something's different or somebody's different, this is where a lot of, I think people's like racism and things like that come from, is they just don't know. People are scared because they're unfamiliar with it. And so as you put yourself out there and you go and you experience these things, you kind of realize, oh my gosh, like this is nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
I'll give an example. I went to Egypt. I had a buddy, he was born there, and is my buddy Haysom, and for 11 years he hadn't been back, and so me and him went a couple of years ago. He's got his family here, 5 kids, and his wife and everything.
Egypt is somewhere I've always wanted to go, and especially Amy over here, like
Dying
see
to
the
go.
pyramids.
Yeah, it's a must.
and
It's a
everything
must
else.
see for sure. It's one of those things where you're just like, how,
Right.
But we got there, and I grew up in Utah. We don't really have the most diversity, and there, and but I went to Egypt, and I'd kind of always had this, not fear, but a little bit of a fear of like Muslim people. And I get out there and we have these 2 dinners back-to-back nights with his entire family, 25, Muslim people. And they were the kindest, most beautiful people. They're just playing with their kids. We didn't speak the same language, but the love language was there. And you're just like, you walk out of there and, when I was leaving, his mom pulled me aside and, and as best as she could say it, she said, I've been so worried about my boy over in America, for 11 years. And to see that he has a friend like you, I love you. Thank you. Wow. It was just like one of those moments of life. You're just like,
I see this like emotion coming up
dude,
in you, bro.
it was just such an emotion. It was, because you're just like, that's what traveling does. That's what putting yourself out there does. You get those moments, those experiences where you get to just feel that, like you'll never forget something like that.
Yeah. And, something that I think in our culture, there's a lot of judgment, and sometimes there isn't a lot of diversity. And, there's actually this guy in politics in Oklahoma. I'm forgetting his name, but I met him, and he said something really important at a meeting one time. And he said, he was a white guy, and he says, you'll hear people say, but I have this black friend, or I have this Latino friend or Hispanic friend. And he was like, he challenges people and says, but how many people of another race, color, culture, whatever, how many have you actually had over to dinner?
Mm-hmm.
How many of those have you welcomed into your home? How many times have you been to their home? Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was a really great perspective, because there's so many defaults that we have where it's like, but I know this guy from work, or I train with this guy at the gym. And so I have this friend from another, place or culture or race. And it was just really profound to hear that, because it's like, oh, that's where conversations happen.
Yeah.
That's where relationship develops. It's like in the home, breaking bread, just like what you said, going there to their home, spending 2 back-to-back dinners with them, 25 people. And those aren't short dinners, right?
Yeah, that's all night. That's a half-day thing.
Yeah, exactly. Dinner's a half-day thing.
Yeah.
And what I loved about being over with the Pygmy people in Africa and Congo and Uganda, and to relate it back to here and a lot of our problems, you see the recidivism rate and people going back to jail. And oftentimes those were kids or sons that had an absent father, someone that wasn't at home. And something that blew me away. And I think there's articles on The Guardian and other places that call the Pygmy people the best fathers on earth.
Wow.
And it's because they hold their children more than 50% of the time. And so I was just talking to Amy about this the other day, and I'm like, it was so cool going to their culture, being welcomed in, being adopted into their family, and having mothers and grandmothers and fathers put their kids in my hands, like, and me being able to hold them and it not being weird, like in looking around at all, like sitting around the fire, holding a kid, like, and just seeing all the dads holding their children. I'm like, damn, these dads are great dads, taking them hunting or taking them to go find honey or going whatever it is, and being there, being present. And that was something that I just learned, like by being there. It was like, wow, these guys are incredible fathers.
Well, that's such a great thing to learn too. I think it's the biggest problem that we have today is like fathers not being present. I really believe that. And communities being able to raise each other with each other's dads and stuff like that. I think that there's, I have a lot of Polynesian friends, and they do such a great job in their community of raising each other. Everyone calls everyone cousin and uncle and everything because they all raised each other, and it creates this. The respect that they have for their elders and for their mothers, and they just want to show up for each other. And it's a really, at least it's like a subculture within our community where I love going and hanging out with them all the time because then they adopt you in the same thing. You're just kind of there, and it's just this family culture, and it's really beautiful when you see it.
Yeah, I have some big Samoan and Tongan friends that are from Dallas-Fort Worth. There's a big community, the Trinity Euless High School. Like they just dominate because they're all like Samoan and Tongan kids that are on the offensive or defensive line. And we would have these big cookouts of, the pig, and I forget what they call it, but those are some of the most fun times. And yeah, you're right. Like saying cousin, friend, brother, all that. It's so cool. Yeah. So man, being the hero of your own story, how does one go about and do that?
Well, and that's, and I think that's the part where there's two things. There's knowing what to do, and then there's actually taking action and doing it, right? Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, I think one of the reasons I wanted to write the book is I wanted to show an outline of, look, this is kind of what it looks like. And it's not...
Well, I think it's important to say, because I know you, and I've seen you, and we've had experiences together, and I've watched you online, it's like you're actually doing it. So you're giving people a practical map from your lived experiences.
Yeah, and that's what the book is. It kind of takes my own experiences, and then I add in examples of other people I've come across in my life, right? And, a couple of years ago, I kind of was trying to figure out what the purpose of my life was going to be. I'd left the religion of my youth, and I was kind of just in this spot where I was trying to figure everything out. And I really dug into it for a lot of effort, put a lot into it. And I came up with this purpose, which is the purpose of my life is to share my tremendous love with all of God's children, bringing happiness to others through my playful soul, and by being an example of living an extraordinary life.
Wow.
And that last part of that, being an example of living an extraordinary life, I'm like, I'm going to show like what this looks like in all aspects of life, like really trying to, and it's cool because anytime I get out of sync, I can look at my mission statement, my purpose, and I go, okay, this is, I'm not being playful right now. I'm upset, or I'm whatever negative energy I'm bringing, or if I'm, just kind of been playing back a little bit, it's like, I'm not living an extraordinary life. And I can kind of put myself through this own test. But so in the book, that's the same thing as like I show people these different stages, right? Because and this as much as anybody, this podcast is called Overcome. Like to get to that stage, thankfully we have God in his wisdom created these trials and these things that happen to us and for us. And so I think what is the most important is understanding that it's all part of that journey. And we have something in common. We both climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with Water Boys. I went the year after you did.
Yep.
And with Chris Long and everybody else. What an amazing experience. But you learn on the mountain, right? Like when you get to the top, you've been on the top, I've been on the top. You're not there very long before you need something else. Like if I
need to go down and get some air.
Yeah, and you're 20 minutes at top of that mountain and you go back down. If it was just about getting to the top, it's the same way in life. Like you've been to the top in life, right? I've been to the top in life, like just these highlights. And you're not there very long before you kind of got to go do the next thing because if we're not growing and we're not contributing, we can't feel that fulfillment. And so many people mistake like getting to the destination. You could fly a helicopter to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro and drop yourself off. You're not going to feel the same way about it.
True.
And so the true journey is
so true.
It's the effort. It's like the struggle. It's the 55 hours on the mountain of hiking and talking with your friends and just experiencing what it's like to overcome. I remember when I was climbing, day 1, I got a blister on my heel. Day 2, I had diarrhea. Day 3, I had motion or altitude sickness. And my last day was my easiest day. Somehow I just got touched by an angel that day and felt amazing. But
you had all the hard stuff to begin.
I did, dude. Yeah. I was like, my first day, I'm like, oh, I'm in big trouble. We're at 10,000 feet and I'm already feeling altitude. But it was, but it's overcoming all that stuff. And then you get to the top and you're like, wow, like what a cool journey. And then you get to experience all that. And then you get to do the next thing and the next thing. And like, even with guys that I've been on that mountain with, we've now experienced so many other things. And, I've gone and done ayahuasca with them in Costa Rica. And I've with other guys, I had one of the guys that was there come and teach my men's group about teamwork. And we did this cool exercise. And then he ended up being a guide for one of the guys' wives in my group that wanted to do her first MMA fight. And she needed help. And I mean, this is all just tying in my head as I'm saying it. But like, she ended up needing some coaching the last minute, and he talked her through with some breathing exercises, and then she went out and she credited that with winning the fight. And it's like all these things like come together, and that's where the journey is so much more than just that hike to the top of that mountain. It's that experience, that relationship that's built, and that's kind of how life goes too. And so it's enjoying all of that and taking all of that in, and that's what creates such an extraordinary life.
This podcast is brought to you by Onnit.com. Onnit.com/overcome. Use the code overcome to save yourself 10% on, I'm holding in my hands, the Alpha Brain Focus Shot. It's in this cool container. Amy's got the website pulled up for you guys watching on YouTube.
Did you drink your Focus Shot this morning?
Absolutely.
I thought you did. I did too.
Yeah. How do you like it?
Oh my God, I feel so good.
I always feel
because it's early right now on a Monday.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. This is one of the earliest podcasts we've done.
Well, this is early for you. Early for you.
Well, to go on the show, yeah, for sure. And it promotes focus and energy, supports a positive mood state, helps manage mental stress. And for me, I truly feel like it helps me get in the flow state faster, stay there longer. Whether I'm going into sparring, I had one before I went to sparring yesterday, and I had a 4.5 hour training session because they were stacked. I went from 12 to 1:30 and then straight over to the gym from 2 to 4:30, 4:40. Came home tired last night, but I was focused the entire time.
I feel like it's very reliable about how I'm going to feel. The more I've used it, the more doing this show, really, the more I'm able to know that when I drink it, I'm going to be on point. My brain's going to be functioning really well. I feel generally good. And that's been so nice to be able to know that it is not going to suddenly make me jittery or suddenly make me feel nauseous or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, that for me is important because some of the products with caffeine, which just has some caffeine, but it's like plant-based and it's healthy and it's a low dose.
It's not jittery bad.
It's not jittery at all. And sometimes I'll have, one of those energy drinks or something, and then I'm over-caffeinated, overstimulated, and then I feel like I can't think as good.
That's not good.
Because it's bothering me.
Yeah.
And all the Alpha Brain line is super reliable. The capsules, my favorites, one of my favorites are the Instant, then the Black Label, and my all-time favorite is what we're talking about now, the Alpha Brain Focus Shots. They're incredibly good tasting. The tropical flavor, they also have peach, I believe, but mine's the tropical because it's passion fruit. And that's
it delivers consistently. And sometimes I'll take one and I'll split it between two smoothies when I make it for us in the morning. I'll just throw a little bit in each and just adds a little something to like our protein powder and the fruit and whatever else we've got in there.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Onnit, for supporting me, my comeback to fighting, Fight for the Forgotten, and this podcast. They make it possible. So please support our sponsors, who honestly I think have the best supplement line in the world. And our favorite products, Alpha Brain or Total Human, get the best in one packet, a morning support and a night support. Thank you for being here with Overcome with Justin Wren and Onnit.com.
Be sure to use that code.
Use the code Overcome. Yep. Save yourself some money. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the, part of your podcast is interviewing exceptional people that are living these extraordinary lives. And I think it's so important that you are sharing that message with others, but also just personally for you, that as you're going out and doing this, trying to live an extraordinary life and be an example, you're interviewing people, getting ideas from them. Almost you guys are charging each other up. you guys are motivating each other, renewing each other. Like whenever you're down and you hear someone else's story, you're like, oh shit, now I can go out and do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The host gets the
overcome.
most, right? Like you're learning the most. And one cool thing about having the podcast is I spend 2 to 3 hours researching each guest. So not only am I getting the time with them, but I'm also learning from them and their story ahead of time. And so, yeah, you end up getting recharged yourself. And you end up becoming friends with all these people. And so as you go out and you put yourself out there, I remember when I started my podcast too, like it was horrible. My first episode, this is like 5 years ago I started, and it was like my buddies' 2 kids were getting into filming, and I had them come and film it. And like, I was trying to, have a crew and everything. It was a mess. But like, I ran out of questions 12 minutes into the interview. I didn't know what to ask this guy. And my buddy from behind the camera starts spitting questions out. This is like the podcast. I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. And that was my first one, and then you fast forward and it's like, now I can interview anybody I really want to get. And it's, we have these amazing conversations, but there's a beauty to just starting and doing it, and the growth is what I was getting at, that I've been able to have my ability to listen, my ability to talk and communicate and pull emotion out of people and all those kinds of things has just exponentially increased just by doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important thing. And honestly, I could have learned from you in that statement, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I wouldn't change it and have it any other way, but I've been told for 10 years that I should start a podcast, and I wouldn't do it. I would say, no, I'm not ready. And I probably wasn't ready in my life circumstances.
You're never ready to start anything.
Yeah.
No, same.
Let's be real.
But once I started dating Amy, we actually met, for the listeners that don't know and for you. We met in Sedona, and it was an incredible kind of experience how we met. It was during this like eye gazing healing type of ceremony thing. But I came down to Austin to do her podcast, and we weren't dating yet. And I asked her out right after her podcast. I was her first guest on her new show. And once we started dating and I saw her doing it and her inspiring me and me listening in on her shows, I would like go in and watch her in action. I was like, oh man, and her encouraging me, you encouraging me, Amy, you can do this, you should do this. And me being asked by the network we used to be with and other people, I was like, you know what, it's freaking time. I should do this. And I think I know that I'm an all-in kind of guy. I'm not going to do it if I'm not really going to do it.
Yeah.
And so maybe that was the hesitancy, but also like it didn't have to be perfect to get started. It just doesn't.
Well, and I think that's the misconception that a lot of people have, is that people that are good at things, right? They see you with your podcast, or they see you doing MMA and wrestling, and they see me with my business stuff, and they're like, oh, those guys are just good at that. It's like, no, we were terrible at that. And by the way, I was just as scared as you probably are to start it. Like, I was like, man, I'm really putting myself out here. What are my parents going to think if I say something? Or what if I say the wrong thing and I'm canceled, And it's like, I was just as scared as anybody else. But you're like, no, you know what? I know. And here's what I think where people get messed up in this is because it's like you're going to feel the fear, but you've got to focus on the reward. You got to focus on your why. Why am I doing this? And I was like, no, I know I can change people's lives. I know with the information I have, with the relationships I have in my life, the guests I'll be able to have on, I'll be able to change people's lives. And so I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to do it. And if you focus on that, then you don't get caught up in, oh my gosh, that episode was terrible, or oh, my audio was a little off, or whatever else, or oh, people are going to think I'm such an idiot. And you focus on the good, and then all of a sudden these messages start coming in, and people start telling you like, "Wow, man, that episode you did with so and so." I had one buddy, as a guy that he didn't know him that well, but he hit me up. This is probably 30 episodes into my podcast, and I'm kind of like, "What am I doing here? Is this worth it?" Like I was enjoying it, but part of me was, and he goes, "Hey, man, I listened to your podcast with so and so, and I decided that day I'm going back to college. I signed up. There's some things I want to do with my life, and that inspired me to do it." And you're just like, all right, cool. Like that was just one person, and then you get, hundreds and thousands of people end up reaching out to you over time. But
yeah, that's incredible, man. Well, so to plug your podcast a little bit, who, if you had to give someone, when they go to either Apple or Spotify or wherever, whatever platform they love, and they say, I want to check out the Jimmy Rex Show, what would be a top episode or two that you would suggest? I know there's a lot.
Yeah, no, there's so many episodes, and it's there's so many different ones that
maybe a personal favorite of yours.
I did one with Dave Vabora. You probably know Dave.
Dave.
He's here in
we
Texas.
We were in Colorado all together.
Yeah. Dave's one of my favorite episodes I've ever had. I mean, what he did, his story, and me and him just jammed together too.
Yeah.
But you know what he's doing for people that have lost different limbs and things like that, and the way that he shows
Did he
up for
climb
people.
Kilimanjaro the year you did?
He did. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's how I met him.
Yeah.
Was climbing Kili, but that was one episode.
What's this
that
foundation called again?
sticks out. Oh my gosh, it just blanked me.
I'm blinking too, but we both know it.
Right.
And it's an incredible foundation for people who have...
oh my gosh, I have
David Verboa
yeah.
Foundation and...
Adaptive
training.
Yes, adaptive training. Wait, it was on the tip of my tongue too.
No. Yeah, well,
Adaptive Training Foundation, and they give so many you'll cry if you go watch some of their videos.
Well, dude, so when we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and this is the reason why, Dave's episode means so much to me. I'll tell this story real quick, but they bring one of the wounded warriors with us to do the hike. I don't know if you guys did as well.
Yeah, we had 3 or 4 people that had amputee or were amputees, and then 3 of the 4 made it up.
Yeah. So we had one, his name was Q, and David trained him for 6 months. And, going into Mount Kilimanjaro, I was just pumped. I got invited by my buddy Jason Van Camp, who was a commander in the military, special forces, everything. And he's just a close friend of mine. And he's like, dude, we got all these NFL guys. Rashad Evans was supposed to go. He ended up canceling last minute. But I was just pumped to meet all these NFL guys. And the first day there, I mean, I'm the realtor, dude. Like, it's like we have these special forces military, all these NFL guys, and the realtor. And so I'm just like kind of snuck my way. And I'm pretty good at getting in the room if I want to be there. I just have this way of doing it. And, but anyway, and so the first day we get there, I'm having breakfast with this guy, Q, the amputee. And his name was Phil, but Quinton, he went by Q. And he's telling me, about his story and how he'd been training for 6 months with Dave in the adaptive training program to do this. And, I asked him his why, and he said, well, he said 21 or 22 military people take their lives every day. And a lot of my buddies back home, they just don't have any sense of purpose. He said, I've been suicidal multiple times, almost killed myself. And I want to prove to them that, there's things that we have worth doing. And I'm like, wow, that's a big why.
Yeah, it is.
And then I'm talking to Dave as we're climbing like day 2 or something on the mountain, right? Just getting to know him. He was a former linebacker for the Rams, and dude's just a badass. And he's telling me about Q, because I'm asking him about him, And I said, how'd you guys train? And he goes, look, man. And he said, like 2 months ago, I got a call from him, middle of the night, from his wife, actually. And he had a rifle in his mouth, shotgun in his mouth. And he was about to kill himself. And he said, dude, we were able to talk him out of it. This is giving him so much purpose. He said, look, he goes, honestly, Jimmy, he goes, if he gets to the top of this mountain, his whole life will open up. He'll be good. He'll be fine. He'll have purpose. He'll know he accomplished it. If he doesn't, he'll be dead in 6 months. And I'm like, no pressure to get to the top of the mountain, So I'm like, geez Louise. And so as we're climbing,
geez Louise.
Yeah.
I'll echo that.
Yeah. And so as we're climbing, I'm just like watching this dude, and I got so emotional at one point because the last day, you know how hard it is. You wake up at 11 p.m., you start hiking, you go all through the night. And I watched him fall like 50 or 60 times. And I mean, he was a full leg amputee, and so he's just really, struggling to get up the mountain. And I watched him crawl at times. I watched him just keep getting back up. And we got to the false summit. You get to, it's like.
We got to the false summit, and there was these people from, not the Netherlands, Austria. And they met us, and then they go, it's right there. And so that false summit, they set us up saying it was right there. So we all charged to it.
Oh, no.
And got there. And then it's like, oh, wait, this isn't it at all.
Yeah.
It's like, we got how much longer to go?
That's another hour and a half walking on the rim, basically, 2 hours. And so we get to the false summit, and we were a little behind. It was 9 a.m. We were supposed to be there by 6 or 7 a.m, I think, just because it was taking him longer to get there. And I'll never forget, because we had the guy Orca. I don't know if that's who led your guys' or not. So this was the guide we had. I remember him and Chris are talking, and they were talking about Q, and they said, look, man, he's given everything. Like, he's basically here. We're here, let's send him back. And we actually had one Marine had turned back. I mean, this is no joke to climb this mountain.
Yeah, we had a Marine or a Navy SEAL and a NFL player turn back.
Yeah, I mean, it's no joke. It's real.
There was a guy that was like a ultra marathon runner that they were rushing down the mountain on a cart with like wheels because he was having the like pulmonary edema or whatever it's called.
Well, it's like altitude gets you. You know, there's nothing you can do. So anyway, so we're sitting there, those two are talking, and And I'm like listening, like, oh no, like they're gonna send him back down. And I'm like, I'm the realtor, I can't say shit, you know. I'm just like looking around for Dave, like I'm like, somebody do something. And I look at him and I see him and I said, dude, they're trying to send Q down, do something. And he walks up, and Dave has this huge presence, you know. And
yeah, he does.
He walks up and he grabs Q and he goes, listen, motherfucker. He goes, you're not done yet. You've got more. We're taking you to the top. You're going all the way to the top. He's like, okay. And I was just like sitting there. I was like, yes. And we basically carried him as a group. Like, I mean, we just had an arm around him the next 2 hours and we get him to the top. I have a video of it. It was just like, I get so emotional about it. It was such a beautiful moment. It was like so much was on the line, and Q wanted to keep going. And those guys, God bless them, they were just trying to make sure he didn't die up there. You know, they were just trying to make sure he's safe. But I was like, I tell that story when I speak sometimes, and I say, like, who's your Dave Vobora? Who's your guy in your life that's going to step up and make sure you don't quit on yourself and make sure that you push to the end and that cares that much about you? And so that, that story, that experience, that's one of my favorite episodes for sure.
Yeah. Well, I hope people go check it out. And that's a good encouragement for me to get Dave.
I'll put a link.
Okay, we'll put a link in the show notes for everyone to go check it out.
But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of great guests. I've had on, Andy Frisella and Prince EA and, the who's who of just business people, billionaires, athletes. But then also some of my best episodes were buddies that are close friends of mine, and they're just, they talk about their child being suicidal or whatever it might be. Just all these different things. There's people that went through just horrible traumas and different stuff and how they've overcome that. That's a lot of the best stories.
Well, you reminded me of a story of one of our guys, Elliot Ruiz, that went up with Chris Long and Nate and me and the guys. And dude, there's two guys in my life now. Man, I didn't think anyone was really going to top like either first MMA, second, like our well drillers out in Africa that are doing the hardest backbreaking work I've ever seen. But there's two stories, and one's Elliot Ruiz climbing Kilimanjaro, and another's a good friend of the show named Chris Murphy, who we had to help him restore his smile. And he had 19 teeth, either completely repaired or replaced and surgery. He did it in 2 days without any pain medication, sitting in the dentist chair for 10 hours at a time. So he gritted it out, like gutted it out. And I was just like, holy smokes, this guy is fighting for a better life, a purpose. Like he had been suicidal and an addiction and all this stuff. But Elliot, I believe his story is 3 Broadway plays, and 2 of them, the first one was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. The second one won the Pulitzer Prize. And he's got, I don't know all the terminology, but I think shrapnel on his body. And so his legs, they would like shake when they would get tired and fatigued. And he's literally got metal in his body from a, is it an IUD?
IUD or something.
Yeah. And so, and his cousin, I think, is the one that wrote the story on his life. And anyways, the way that he gritted it, he just was not going to stop. And I've never seen someone trembling like this on day 3, on day 4, on day 5. I think it took us 8 days up there.
Wow.
We went the longest route, and we had some guys that had mobility issues, and so we were a little slower. But Elliot, on the last day, so we were passing a stomach bug around the whole time to each other. And I think it was just Elliot and I that get hit the hardest with it the last day, but it was before we started up the summit. And so we woke up at 11, supposed to start at midnight, and Elliot and I both were hit with vomiting and the other side, like right before we start the climb. So it's him and I and like pulling out the back, and they're already gone. Like we just see their headlamps. You know, we have one of the porters or the guides that are back with us, and we're trying to hoof it up there. And Elliot is puking. I'm talking basically the whole way up. We started at midnight. We didn't finish till 8 p.m. us. And so he's laying on his back, vomiting, laying on his face, vomiting, like having to pull his pants down, jump behind a rock, or just right there. And when we were up at the top, because it got real cold, I mean, he was having tears like freeze to his face. Wow. And they were telling him, turn back. You got to turn back. He's like, you can't tell me to turn back. I'm not stopping. Like it was just never a doubt in his mind. Like, I'm not stopping. And so that was on that documentary we got to do for NFL Network all the way up. And I was just like, dude, you are a beast. We have it up here. I think the Los Angeles Times pulled up Elliot and his story.
Yeah, he was the main character in Chiara Allegria Hudes plays Elliot a soldier's fugue. Water by the Spoonful and The Happiest Song plays last, which is a trilogy portraying the experiences of him during and after the Iraq War.
Wow.
Yeah. He's an absolute stud.
Well, it's funny that you say that. When we went to go climb the mountain, and this is kind of like how I look at life, but I made the decision before I went. I said, no matter what, I'm not turning back.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not willing to negotiate with myself because it's going to get brutal. It's going to get hard. And your feet are certainly worse than they ever have. You're frozen. Your heart's pounding out of your chest. Your head's about to explode. And I just had made that decision. Like, they're going to have to carry my dead ass off this mountain before I don't go to the top. And so, like, I love that mentality because if you're sitting there negotiating with yourself all the time, you're going to talk yourself out of it, you know? And I was like, no, this isn't about a negotiation. Like, this is when I say go, we go, and we're going. Like, and I love that though.
Yeah, man, that's so good. I remember I had a fairly easy time until the last day. And that last day, you know, waking up at over 15,000 feet, you're already like, feel like a elephant sitting on your chest.
Yeah, it's a long day.
Yeah, and then you're vomiting on top of it. And the way I throw up, Amy, have you heard me throw up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's loud.
Yeah. Oh, you've heard me throw up.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard me throw up a lot. I was the first one to go, right?
Yeah.
And I think I would throw up, and I barely, some reason my body doesn't give me much time to inhale. So it's like, and then it's boom again, just another one. And I'm throwing up my toenails, and it's just, it's violent. And so when you're up at over 15,000 feet or 17,000 feet or 18,000 feet and you're throwing up and then you're not able to get oxygen back. I mean, I literally felt like, oh my gosh, like worse than any fight, worse than any grappling match, worse than any wrestling match. Like, I just couldn't get oxygen. So then I'm thinking like, all right, I'm not stopping, but like, am I going to pass out? Like, I'm not getting oxygen into my body when I'm throwing up like this. And it was one of the hardest things that last day. And so me and Elliot were just side by side, and it was awesome to see him make it to the top. And in our pictures at the summit, there's one guy that looks like he's dying. Like, he's not really there. Like, it's a ghost of him right there. And he's like astral projected like somewhere else, or he's in the shadow realm. And he doesn't really remember all of it, I don't think. But just that was a learning experience to me. How much more do we have in the tank?
Yeah. And
then we get uncomfortable, or we get insecure, or we get down on ourselves about someone, or someone else says something that kind of hits home, brings up some sort of childhood trauma or inner child wound.
Totally.
And then we're like, nah, you know, throw in the towel and say, I'll try something else now, or I'll stop trying this new thing that I really want to do, and I'll just concede, and I'll go back to the cubicle or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think that's part of, you know, like what I talk about in the book is doing these things. When you do them and you experience them and you overcome them, right, then you have a little bit more confidence for the next time, and you can draw on those experiences, and you can call on yourself. Because it's like, if you're always used to just stopping or giving up on yourself, or if you've never done hard things, like, that's one thing that's so great about sports. I mean, wrestling and fighting, I mean, it's you and you. Like, you either won or you didn't. There's no, you know, you're right there. You're in the fight. Same thing with sports, though, and it teaches you how to, like, do these things. And even if you don't win, there's a sense of accomplishment, of self-worth that you get from that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest conflicts I have with how, you know, society is being ran today is we want to give people everything. We want to have these hands. And there's some people that need, like, help and things like that. But there's a lot of situations where, to their detriment, you give them too much, and then they don't earn it. And what it does is they don't have that self-worth that you can only get from earning something or from accomplishing something. And that's what you need to be able to draw on when times get tough or when things get hard. You're like, no, I got this. I already know how to do hard things. That's one of the reasons I like traveling. A lot of times I go by myself even. You have to figure shit out, you know?
Yeah,
it's like, and once you've done it.
Solve.
Yeah, like, people love traveling with me because they're like,
new
Jimmy's
friends.
got this. Like, I've been to so many places and experienced so many things. I've been there when they told me my visa was no good and I figured it out. I've been there when whatever, you know, and you just have to wing it and figure it out. But as you do those things, you get confident and you get a sense of worth where you're like, okay, I'm the asset. I can do this. I can figure this out.
Yeah. Get creative whenever a problem comes up.
Yeah.
Fightfortheforgotten.org. You can go check out Fight for the Forgotten, the foundation that I started. It is my passion project. It is something that I love so much because of the people we get to help. We get to help the pygmy tribe who adopted me in help themselves. We say opportunity is greater than charity. Charity can be great, but opportunity is just always better. That's why we've drilled something like 80 water wells already, providing over 30,000 people clean water. We've started sustainable farms, bought back over 3,000 acres of land for the people who originally owned it, put it in their name. We built 32 homes, and now we're about to start a health center, a school, and a marketplace. They're going to have a maternity ward, a pediatrics unit, and a dental suite. You can join the Fight for the Forgotten Fight Club at fightfortheforgotten.org. We would love, love, love to invite you on this journey to join this fight arm in arm with us. Our Fight Club, it's a monthly giving club. You can give $5 or more a month, and that empowers us to empower people. Thank you for being on this journey with us. I invite you to come along for the ride. It's been absolutely epic, putting love and compassion in action and fighting for people. Fightfortheforgotten.org. Join our Fight Club.
So I really like what you said there about handouts, because our organization, I love Water Boys as well, but our organization, Fight for the Forgotten, really is about not giving handouts, but giving hand-ups. And so we say opportunity is greater than charity. Charity can be great, but opportunity is just always better.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yes.
And so, yes, charity should be given or reserved, maybe even reserved, for times of war, famine, natural disaster, people with disabilities who can't help themselves, but like the Adaptive Training Foundation, you teach them to take the opportunity. And so with specifically water wells and traveling, like that's the broken system in the NGOs today. Is there's over 230,000 broken wells.
Yeah.
And that's billions of wasted charitable dollars. And that's because the locals weren't empowered or equipped with the tools or educated with the knowledge. And it's people that just do the show up, blow out technique.
Yeah, it's like you want to feel good, so you think you're doing something, but at the end, you're not really making a difference. So it's like, what are you ultimately trying to do?
It's not locally affordable. They're not locally mobilized. It's not a local-led solution for a local problem.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I'm right there with you, man, because you shouldn't, even with good intention, you shouldn't rob people of the opportunity to have dignity, right? To be able to be the solution.
When I was talking to Dave about this specific thing, when he told me how many ex-military guys commit suicide every day, I was like, holy cow, like that's a crazy number. And what he told me is he said, look, they get home and there's like this honor for service people now. There's definitely this respect. And they'll give them tickets to the game. They'll give them discounts, whatever. He said, well, they don't need that. What they need is purpose. He said their job was so important before, and they get home and all of a sudden they don't have any purpose anymore. Yeah. And when you don't have a purpose, when you don't feel like you matter, that's when you get to a point of, where you don't have any purpose for living, and you can, get to the point of taking your life. And so instead of teaching people or giving people, stuff, you teach them ways to create purpose in their lives. Now, so that Q, when he got home from Mount Kilimanjaro, for example, he now leads one of the groups at the Adaptive Training Program. And he is one of the instructors, and he's thriving. I talked to him. We had him come speak to my men's group back in April, and he's like the least polished public speaker ever. But like every single person said, it was one of his all-time favorite speakers we've had, because he's just so raw, and like his heart is so beautiful. But he's helping other men now that were in that same position, and it's given him so much purpose for his own life.
And I think because he's so passionate about it, he's experienced it, right? He can be that raw, and people can instantly, if they've been there, relate. And it resonates because you're not hearing from a guy that necessarily, I really appreciate people that are trained and that are experts, that have some sort of skill, like a doctor, things like that. But if you just have the head knowledge, it's got to connect to the heart, and sometimes people are too heady, and it doesn't impact people's hearts because it's just going in one ear and out the other. But whenever you hear someone's gritty story of like, whoa, this is what he experienced, and I felt that way too, man, that can change someone's life.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, David, I'm pumped about him, man, and just the impact he's making.
Oh yeah.
I remember him. I think it was Q's story. He told me that in Colorado, and he was like, I had to go grab him, snatch him up, say, "What are you doing? You're not doing this. This isn't going to just hurt you. It's going to hurt her. It's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt everybody. You can't be one of these guys. Like, your story's different." And I was just like, whew, that fired me up because I've been there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so to turn it back to you and your story, my man, what has been, because the show's called Overcome, and we basically say, you, me, we've overcome 100% of our darkest days. And how do we rise up and overcome? So what's one of those stories where you've had to win this fight called life and rise to the occasion or the challenge or back from the brink of defeat and overcome?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll tell you a little bit. Like when I was a kid, I was, and this was one of the first pivotal moments of my life, but I was, baseball was my life. I was a baseball kid. My brother was the 2-time state MVP. Our whole family played and everything. And when I was 12, 13, 10, 11, all those years, I was an all-star. And I'll never forget this day. When I was 14. It's a very pivotal age. You know this, like there's just so much, you're so impressionable at that age, and I remember it was the end of the season, and we were all sitting there, me and all my friends sitting there together, 15, 16 of us. And it was like, we're out the field and it was kind of like a stadium. And so we were all sitting kind of in the front. All the parents and grandparents are sitting behind you. And they were out on the field and they would call the kids up one by one who was the all-stars. They were going to be hanging out all summer, playing together and everything else.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there with all my buddies and they start calling the all-stars and calling them up one by one. And it comes down to I'm looking out there and there's 5 trophies. Each kid gets a trophy that makes a team. And I look and there's 6 of us sitting there. And I look down the line and I'm like, oh no, these guys are all better than me. I'm like, I don't think I made the team. And one by one, they called these dudes up until they were all out there on the field. I'm literally sitting there by myself, the only one that didn't get called up, right? And it was this pivotal moment in my life because
What age were you?
14.
14.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do. I just started crying. Just like this. All my friends are out there. I didn't make the team. And to be honest, I wasn't good enough and I didn't work hard enough. And I knew that in that moment. So even as it was the worst I'd ever felt in my entire life, right? I'm just sitting there and I can feel the shame. My parents probably feeling this sorry for me and everybody, all my buddies' parents and all my buddies themselves. And it's just like, you're just sitting there like on an island just by yourself. I'm just crying. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment, like, Jimmy, you didn't work hard enough. Like, you will never feel like this again because you were outworked by other people. And that was like the day I became an achiever, right? And I associated I needed to be good enough to be accepted with my friends. I wouldn't be able to hang out if I wasn't good enough. And so, unfortunately, I created this person that was always trying to prove himself and always trying to be enough, which has its positives and negatives. I became, excellent at all these things I did. But I was doing it out of this place of fear of not being loved, maybe. And so it wasn't until several years later. Well, in that same year, my father, he wanted me to get held back a year in school. And I was one of the older kids. I was one of the smarter kids. I had a good group of friends, but he wanted me to get held back because he saw this pain I'd had, like of not being on the baseball team. And he wanted, me to be the star player. And he thought if I got held back a year that I would be able to be a star. And so he's like, hey, let's hold you back a year. You'll be the oldest kid. And he put a lot of pressure on me to do it. And ultimately, I remember I was sitting in his truck. I was 14 years old again because you have to do it in 8th grade. And I looked at him and said, Dad, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get held back. And he's like, okay, well, just so you know, you're not good enough. You'll never play again. And I know now the power of words and affirmations and all the way we speak. So I wrote under my hat for 3 years that said, you're not good enough. I was trying to prove, like that was my motivation to prove to myself that I was going to prove to my dad I was good enough. So I hadn't thought of this hat for like 15 years, right? And my first day I ever did plant medicine, my first night I ever did it, about halfway through the night, I saw my hat. And
what was it?
It just
mushrooms
said,
or psilocybin?
It was a heart opener with some mushrooms and different things like that. Yeah, psilocybin. And I'm sitting there and I look at my hat and it says, you're not good enough. And now that I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? I hadn't thought of that hat in 15, 20 years, but I'm like, oh my gosh. And it hit me. And I had this message, how you get them in journeys. And it was just like, Jimmy, this has served you. It no longer does. Let it go. And I was like, wow. And I loved the message. It said, this has served you. It no longer does. And so I was able to kind of like realize in that moment, like, oh, you're just enough. And then it was like, the next message was, now go release your dad. He has pain around this too. And so I actually called my dad. First time I've ever been high in my life. I'm calling my dad. My super Mormon dad, by the way. And, and I call him up. It was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night. he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, hey, Dad, I just wanted to talk to you for a second. I said, and he'd had a lot of pain. He'd made some decisions, and he wasn't really part of the family the last 10 years as much as he wanted to be. And me and him had kind of repaired our relationship a little bit, but it was still kind of And I just said, Dad, I know you beat yourself up a lot over the things you did wrong, but I want you to know, like, I love my life, Dad. I really am grateful for the life I have. I have a beautiful life, and a lot of that is because of the way you raised me. I said, so if you're going to keep beating yourself up over the things you did wrong, you need to give yourself credit for everything you did right.
Wow.
And he just started crying. He's lost. He's like, wow, he's like, I tried my best. I'm like, I know, Dad, and it was beautiful, and I was like, I love you. And it just healed everything. That was my very first time ever doing plant medicine. I'm like, well, this is going to be a part of my life forever.
Yeah.
But that was a beautiful moment. But my point in telling that whole story was I had kind of become this guy that I was seeking validation so much and trying to prove myself in everything that I did that I couldn't just be me. I couldn't just enjoy it. I couldn't just relax and feel like I was enough. And so for me, a lot of my youth, a lot of what I, had to deal with was more so an internal battle going on, whereas like I had a lot of success in every way, but it was always this emptiness of like I couldn't feel like I was worthy of it or enough or whatever else. And so that really was, I actually have the tattoo of that date on my finger,
Wow.
December 7th, 2018, because it was such a profound moment, but it was just a life-changing moment for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's powerful, because I've definitely struggled with the feeling of, I was told in a moment, and we're going to do your show as well, but it was basically I was told you're not good enough, and you're worthless, you should just kill yourself. And that thing has been on repeat in my mind anytime that I feel like I stumble and fail or let someone down. It's like, oh, I know what to do here. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
You're worthless, you should just kill yourself. And I've had a lot of freedom from that in the last year, especially the last 8 months, but it's really profound that you were able to replace that with, I am good enough.
Yeah, I'm making these special edition hats for my men's group, and they're gonna, because a lot of people know that story. I've shared it with my guys and stuff, and it's gonna say "You're good enough," and it's gonna be on the bottom of the hat.
That's really great.
Yeah.
I love that.
I came up with that the other day.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can get two.
I got
as
you.
well.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
What's your men's group?
It's called We Are
And
the
hey,
Day.
brother, I just want to acknowledge, I love you, man. I love your heart.
Thank you.
And I can see it in your eyes. You are a big, joyful lover. Like you love big.
Thank you, man. No, I do. I really love being able to be me, man. My life is blessed, and I have a big heart. And I'm willing to give myself grace. I screw up all the time, right? And I just have lucky enough that I understand my own. So I think God has this like beautiful sense of humor, and I think He literally just is up there laughing, like, you're not gonna believe what this dumb shit Jimmy did today, and He just laughs about it, and He loves it. And I'm like, if God can laugh at me, I can laugh at me, and I try to share what I can, and just don't take it too serious, and it creates a beautiful life, honestly. And so I just try to, like I said, my mission statement, just try to share love with everybody and create those moments,
Can I ask a question?
You bet.
Since you brought up mission statement too, I noticed it's on your website as well. And do you encourage other people to write a mission statement? When did you write this, or did it evolve over time? Because I know I've written one. Justin pretty much has. I mean, you definitely did for this show.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you have one for your life. But anyway, I was curious about that.
As Jimmy gets ready to answer this question, can you read it one more time for the listeners? His mission statement?
Well, he rattled it off perfectly.
I repeat it every day multiple times, so I can rattle it off at any time.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. You can say it again.
The purpose of my life is to share my tremendous love with all of God's children, bringing happiness to others through my playful soul and by being an example of living an extraordinary life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, I grew up super Mormon, and when I was 32 I started questioning some things, left that religion. And I mean,
and how old are you now, Jimmy?
I'm 40.
40, yeah.
But when you're that religious, I mean, I went and did the mission. I was a virgin in my 30s, didn't drink alcohol till my mid 30s. Like, I mean, I was a damn good Mormon. And so when when you know where you're from, why you're here, where you're going, what's right, what's wrong, everything's kind of mapped out for you. Things are pretty easy. You don't really have much to think about, right? But when all of a sudden you take that all off the table, you're kind of lost. You're kind of like, and I don't even know if most people that, like, I've left that religion, but I wouldn't want most of my family and friends to, because it's very difficult. There's just it leaves you with such a hard area to fulfill or to fill up at that point. And so for me, I had about this 4-month period where I was really struggling to figure out what my life was going to be about. I actually went to a Tony Robbins event, the Date with Destiny event. And in that event, you spend a week coming up with your life's purpose and some of that stuff. So it's all part of that. I came up with it in that week, but I took it very serious. Probably spent 20 hours on just that life's purpose, because he takes you back to your youth. He goes through this whole thing of all of your past. Then he goes through this whole thing envisioning your future, what you stand for, all your value systems, what you're going towards, what you're going against, all these different things. And you put that all together, and then you kind of can figure out what you want your life to look like. And so it's this 6-day process that I think everybody should do. But so for me, it was going to that Date with Destiny.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Can't remember what I was going to say before that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I interrupted it.
No, it's all good. But anyways.
I interrupted too.
But yeah, so I think it's important for people to know that. But I do encourage everybody to figure that out, because it's just be a guiding principle, right? For me, it actually guides me much more clear than when I had all of this morals and morality around religion figured out for me. Like that was still kind of like, those weren't mine. Those weren't emotional. That was just something that was put on me, right? Like I believed that since I was born, because that was what it was installed in me. But when I came up with this from my heart, from my soul, it was like, oh, I know exactly this is my thing. And it just gave me a lot more clarity on how I was going to live.
I love that. If I had to rattle off something, I should actually write it down, but I think I'm supposed to just put love and compassion in action and fight for people, fighting to help people build better lives, and to basically with fight for the forgotten, overcome oppression with overwhelming opportunity, and defend the weak, love the unloved, and empower the voiceless, and things like that. But I think I need more in there about who I am and what I am to do or be. And yeah, I love this conversation, because it's not like, hey, bro, what do you do? It's like, who are you, man?
Yeah.
And you're telling us.
Well, it's funny because like I can't do surface conversations anymore. Yeah. I've gotten so much depth, and doing plant medicine journeys and stuff is, you get really deep. You go into the real stuff. And it's like, after having so many deep conversations with friends, I just want nothing to do with the bullshit service conversation. Like, when people are having that mask on and, it's like, no, let's get real with each other. If we want to connect, let's actually connect. And I had a life coach that is still with me to this day. She's actually joined my men's group. She helps with the one-on-one coaching now with the guys. But she told me very early on, she said, Jimmy, you're most lovable when you're vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And so those are 3 pillars of our program: is vulnerable, authentic, and integrity. And obviously you want to be vulnerable with the right people. But when you actually express vulnerability, when you talk about, things that maybe you're scared about or you're not sure about, we're so scared that people will judge us or they won't like us. And what happens is they just love you so much more. I was with somebody the other day, and they were struggling with something, and I could tell they were a little bit apprehensive to go into it more, but they wanted to. And I said, hey, would it help if I told you something that I'm a little bit like scared about right now, like feeling a little vulnerable about? And I told something that I hadn't told anybody. It was pretty vulnerable. And she's like, wow, like, I'm glad you shared that. Like, I wouldn't even have thought that. And then she opened up, a lot more. And it was cool. We were able to connect on such a deeper level, because I was willing to be vulnerable. Because, some people might be like, oh, Jimmy's got his shit all figured out and he never has any problems or anything. It's like, that's not relatable. Like, my guys see me struggling. They see me go through things, and they're so much more prone to want to open up themselves at that point. And so it really is a superpower if you can get yourself to that point where you're just willing to be real and be vulnerable with people.
So to be the hero of your own story, a key factor in that is to learn to be vulnerable in the right times, because vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. It's courage.
It is.
And living authentically so that you're not hiding in the shadows.
Yeah, when you do this so great, your story, you're very open about it, and it helps so many people. It's why it resonates, because you're being so vulnerable. You're willing to go, yeah, this tore my soul out. This killed me, like this was really hard on me. And like when I listened to your story, like I was getting choked up. I'm like, man, like from both angles, I'm like, man, I remember when I was a kid and I got picked on for some stuff. And then I'm like, shit, I remember when I was kind of a dick to some people when I was younger too. And I was like, both things got me emotional. Like, damn it, like, I mean, I'm a human, but you're like, but because you're willing to do it, you connect with that person. Then you're like, wow, I want to be more like him. I want to help more people like that. Wow.
Well, thank you. That honors me. I'm humbled. But it's something that has been brought up in this conversation where maybe I have the opportunity to be vulnerable. You're talking about your journey, leaving the Mormon faith at 32, going on this 8-year journey, and then through plant medicine. And, we met at Ayahuasca ceremony with a lot of great people. But the only one I've really stayed in contact with is Drew, Drew McManus or Satsang.
Yep.
And I think it's because I have a lot of shame wrapped around it. And while I was there, it probably seemed, or I was probably perceived as having a really powerful, profound, really good experience. But what I learned real quickly after was that I was chasing an experience, and I was, and for me, it wasn't medicine, it was drugs. And ayahuasca was a drug to me then. And so I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity to do it again. In this moment, I think no, because I am someone with addiction.
Right.
And so I think I came under it hoping for a magic pill or a magic potion that was going to cure my addiction. I was looking for the quick fix, thinking that, and it wasn't being advertised from this group as healing people of addiction, but it was trauma and inner child wounds. And we're going to go deep, and we're going to have these profound experiences, and you're going to meet God, be touched by the Spirit. Like, I was just and it was these epic, profound, amazing humans that I was there with. But very shortly after, like a day after, and then for like a week, I went through one of the deepest, darkest moments of my life, and I just disappeared on everybody, on Amy, on the people there that were filming, on our experiences, on you guys. And I've been very hesitant to have any communication because I feel like I hurt myself, I hurt Amy, I hurt, and my rational mind, or being vulnerable now, it's like if I told the people that were all there, hey guys, that was the darkest week of my life after that, they'd probably be like, oh my gosh, we love you, like we support you, all this stuff. But anyways, I think that it's an opportunity, you being here, that like I could even share that with the group.
Well, dude, that gets me a little emotional, because so many people that come to me are trying to get that quick fix. They're trying to get the magic pill, and it's hard for me to explain to them that's not what this is. And if you go in looking for that, it's going to be really hard. So hearing you say that, just you opening up about that, you're going to help people not have that same experience that you had. Because that's the beauty of vulnerability, right? Like, you now sharing that, I promise you, there's going to be people that it will help so much, because they'll be like, oh, this doesn't always. And I've tried to explain to people, they they want more medicine or more experiences. And I'm like, no, that's not it, guys. Like, this is simply a tool to help you get to a spot to integrate that into your life or to work on that. But so many people hear the magical, and my experiences are pretty magical, to be honest, in ayahuasca. But you sharing that and you being vulnerable, like, it does make you so much more easy to talk to, and so much more lovable, and so much more relatable. And that's the beauty of vulnerability again.
Well, thanks. I think, so I went to treatment probably a year before that experience, because it was April, so 2020. And then, or May of 2020 through August, so 90 days. And then I tried some plant medicine, had powerful, profound experiences. So spiritual experiences. And then after that, like, it started a dark spiral. Not that I wasn't already there, but it was a darker, deeper, faster spiral. And then I had to go to treatment again. And really grateful for the treatment and the experiences I'd gone through, at least, to get me to the point where I'm now, where I'm in the most love I've ever been with life and with Amy and other things. But I would say that there's a danger in it. There's so much good.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be the right place, right set, right setting, all that stuff, but also like the right heart, like coming into it with the right heart. And I fooled myself thinking I had the right heart and the right intentions and doing it for the right reasons. And there's places here, man, in Austin that are like, quote unquote, sober living homes, that while guys come out of treatment, they're just taking them on all these journeys from MDMA to ayahuasca to iboga to Bufo to everything. And I literally know someone on the inside there, And they go, dude, I think we have a 0% success rate.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's because you guys are taking real deal addicts and alcoholics that when a substance is introduced to their body, yes, it can address trauma and they might get some freedom from that trauma. But I think biologically, it's setting off an allergy or a mental obsession, a physical reaction to a physical substance. And so for me, where I'm sitting at now, and I just want to help someone out there that's thinking ayahuasca is the answer, this plant medicine is the answer. If you're actually dealing with addiction, actual real addiction, I think it's, I don't think another drug fixes a drug problem.
Yeah.
And so you really have to do the deep internal work. There might be some cases that, like going through opiate heroin withdrawal and Iboga gets you off of that and sets you off. But then you probably need to go to a real deal treatment center for 90 days.
Yeah, it's the work that you do, when you're not on the medicine that really is going to make the difference or not. And if you have the addiction issues, it's the success rate probably is going to be pretty low.
Man, I think trauma and healing and inner child stuff and just if you don't have actual addiction, man, I would tell everybody go.
Totally.
Not everybody, but you should try.
I'm the biggest advocate for it.
I'm an advocate.
Yeah. No.
Now I'm an advocate because of how good the experiences were. But if you're like me and you're an actual addict, then I would suggest against it.
Well, cool
or sometimes you need the experience so that Amy's pointed that out to me before.
For
that if I didn't do it, I would always wonder.
Well, and I'm kind of over here sitting there thinking the same thing. Like that probably still worked for you.
It did.
Right?
It did.
Like as much as that sucked, that was probably working for you. But at the end of the day, you're smart enough and you're have enough emotional intelligence to tell, okay, this wasn't like, I know what this was and I know what it wasn't. And you were able to pull back from needing that,
Yeah, and I am grateful I had the experience because there was some powerful. I've learned.
I'm grateful because we met each other.
Yeah, exactly.
See there?
Exactly. Yeah. I needed it because this conversation is happening.
Exactly.
And you're really blessing me and our listeners and Amy today, my man. So, I mean, there's so much stuff we could talk about and your story, but I wonder about leaving the conditioning of your youth, your whole life.
Yeah.
32 years. You say you were a virgin into your 30s?
Yeah,
that's not everyone's
did the damn
story,
thing,
right?
Man. Yeah, no, I was very, and I'd been on. I actually am writing a book right now. It's my journey to self-love, and it's all through my dating and my relationship lives and all that. And it's called "It Was Me All Along: What I Learned About Love After 1,000 First Dates." And yeah, it's a badass title. But I've literally
some props there.
Thanks. Yeah.
Can you say it one more time for people that missed it?
Yeah. It was me all along. What I learned about love after 1,000 first dates.
Wow.
And I've been on about 1,200 first dates in my life. I mean, I chased love so hard, and I grew up in my entire 20s. I'd go on 3 or 4 dates a week. And I never connected with any of these women, any of these girls. And it was, I was dating what I thought I should be versus what my soul was telling to me. And thankfully, I'm kind of a stubborn ass. And so I never just settled into one of these relationships. But there was a lot of pressure on me to get married, to live a certain way. And I'm so grateful. I just always listened to my soul and I listened to my heart. But anyway, I tell that story because, I was all in. Like it was everything in my life till it was nothing, basically. It wasn't just this casual thing that I did. But it is, it's fascinating to look back because and if somebody hasn't experienced it, you don't understand because it's like your whole world is this and it's everything. And then all of a sudden it's almost like a death. You strip away everything you've thought, everything that you believed. And it's just a fascinating experience to go through.
Yeah. And so in that, you're overcoming that, but also losing a sense of self or identity.
Yeah.
And then you're going on a whole new journey, but I think you're sitting in a really unique place, man. All of us are unique. Anyone hearing this now, like we're all unique, but your experience is super unique where you go from Mormonism, hardcore, to even a bunch of plant medicine journeys, or not a bunch, but powerful ones that change the trajectory of your life, and still in your mission statement is to love all God's children.
Yeah.
And so how has that journey been for you where super religious in one way, now trying something really outside the box in our culture, not in like South American culture or even Africa where they do the Iboga and everything else I began, but still pointing it back to your tremendous loving God's children?
Yeah, and a couple things. I mean, I had, even though I was a very religious household and it was very strict rules and things like that, like my parents let me be me. Which was really cool. Yeah, they were really good. And maybe they didn't have time with 7 kids to do anything different. No, they were really good at just, they found the humor in even my idiocy and things I would do. But so I think one thing is I always felt like I could be myself. I gave myself permission to be curious, to go and try different things, right? Even within those boundaries of the church for a while. And then stepping out, it was so foreign for me to even take that first step. But I did have a couple experiences. I had an experience. I'll tell you this experience real quick because this is where I kept my faith in God. Because when I lost my faith in the church and everything else, for a while, Jesus was up in the air, what he was and everything to me and all these other things. The one thing I knew was that there's a higher power. There is a God and he loves purely. And what had happened is, so when I was in high school, my senior year of high school, my father had come out and just admitted to our family that he'd been cheating on my mom for 20 years. And, in a Mormon household where you got rules and everything, it was like the roof getting blown off the house.
He told everybody?
Yeah, he just wanted to get it off his chest. He wanted to finally come clean, and we didn't catch him. He decided it was time to tell everybody. And it was crazy, right? And our family's just kind of like, what do we do with this?
Did your mom have any idea?
No, it was bad. Yeah, it was bad moments, right? And you're trying to work through that. And so for the next...
Not to ask too many questions. Was it the same woman for 20 years?
No, different. It wasn't continuous, but the first time had been 20 years ago, and then the last one had been a few months ago. And so it was on and off for 20 years, yeah. And by the way, life is nuanced, right? I can look at now and see different things. But my point was at that time, so for 6 months, we're trying to figure it out. And then I went on my mission. I went on a Mormon mission. So I was gone for 2 years. And you don't talk to your family.
How old are you now?
19. Yeah. So this was during my senior year. And then 6 months later.
You're rocked by that news 6 months later.
Yeah. And so when I leave, my family's in total disarray, right? But was a gift because, to be honest, I didn't have to be there for the chaos. And because you only talk...
2 years?
For 2 years. You only talk to them on Mother's Day and Christmas. And you're writing letters, but I'm in Mexico. It's taken 3 months to go back and forth on a letter, So it's there's nothing urgent going on in my world. I'm just was able to forget about it. But I get back and it's still chaotic. My parents are separating. They're trying to figure it out. And for a few years, they tried to work it out. And then they decide they're going to get a divorce. Well, their church leader tells them, look, instead of getting divorced, why don't you guys go on a mission? And so, which is funny. And so they decide to go on a mission. They get called to Disney World, of all places. Of course, I wanted them to go to Africa or some shit where they'd have to suffer.
They went to Disney World?
Yeah, literally Orlando, Florida.
There's a mission to Disney World.
Well, it's Orlando, but they're basically going to Disney World and SeaWorld and shit, And so they go out there and they have the time of their lives. And here's the problem is my dad, after he had come out and, and talked about what he'd done, he kind of lost that patriarchy of the house. He lost the respect of, he's trying to tell me what to do. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't how this is going to go anymore,
Yeah.
And, but on his mission, my dad's a very charismatic guy. 95% of the time, he's just such a good dude. And he had huge success as a missionary, helping people come back to church, and him and my mom apparently had a great time. Well, it came back time to come home, and my mom wanted to be around the kids and grandkids. She wanted to be back in Utah. My dad got so much significance and love being a missionary because everyone there loved him. He brought so many people back to church, and he wanted to stay out there. And my mom was like, "No, we're going to Utah." And anyway, long story short, he ended up going out there to set up a company and ended up cheating on my mom again with somebody that he'd met while he was a missionary and stuff. And so it was at that point, we as a family were like, "Mom, you're done with Dad. This thing's over. You're getting a divorce." And it's terrible. And when I called my dad to ask him about it, he lied to me. And so at that point, I just said, I'm not going to talk to my dad ever again. I don't need to. I'm done with him. And so for 2.5 years, I was 25, 26 years old, 27 years old, I didn't talk to my dad. But I still loved him. I still had all these great memories, and I had a happy childhood for the most part. And so I was kind of just conflicted. And so I was praying to be able to love my dad again. That was basically my prayer. And one day I had this feeling I should call my dad after 2.5 years. And so I call him up and I'm just like, "Hey Dad, you want to go to lunch?" And he's like, "Yeah, I would love to, of course." And again, I've been praying to help me love my dad again. And I walk into this Paradise Bakery and I see my dad sitting there. And I just had this most overwhelming feeling of love like I never have in my life for another human, for my dad. And I had this message that was, "I'm going to show you how I love your dad." it was like the love of God. It was so pure and beautiful. And I'm just like, holy shit. And it was like, if God can love this way, I can love this way. And so me and my dad repaired stuff there, and and I just knew at that moment, God loves us so pure and so beautifully. And it's like, he was able to show me, like, your dad is a broken man, but you don't have to have this expectation of him to be perfect. Like, just love him. He doesn't need you to judge him. Just love him. And it was like, wow. So when I lost my faith, I had this experience, and I was like, okay, well, I know there's a God, and I know he loves me. And like, that alone was enough of a base for me. And it was so profound to me that I was able to just really just cling to that. Like, there is a higher power, there's a source, there's a God, and he loves the shit out of me. And that was what I kind of had. And so when I started reconstructing what I was going to do with my life, right, like, that was, I did have that strong base. And I think that, to answer your question, goes into my mission statement a little bit, of how I was able to then pivot. And I think for me, and you can't even help it, like, when you're in a church or a religion like that, there's so many rules, and there's so much is right and wrong. It's like, this is right, this is wrong. And so you judge a lot, and you don't even mean to, right? Like, I remember for me, I was so judgmental. And I remember I would judge people. Like, if I'd walk into someone's house and they had alcohol displayed, like, I was out. I'm like, well, the Holy Spirit isn't here. I'm gone, and like, I'd always judge people for hand tattoos too. And so I actually have some hand tattoos now. It's my way of, like, putting myself into that non-judgmental place. And then I have a tequila collection displayed in my house. But so for me, the difference between being in where I was then and where I am now is, when I was in the church, I really cared what people were doing. And I've changed my entire focus to how people are doing. And that's made all the difference for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So what is it like with, 8 years looking back, and what was at 32 years old or 31 years old, maybe like your relationship with God or your understanding of God, and now 40 years old, like kind of the difference, which.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference too is understanding, like, God. So, like, if you've ever seen the play, The Book of Mormon, and it's pretty popular.
I haven't seen it.
So they talk, there's a song, and it talks about scary Mormon God. And it's a real thing. It's like, it's like, you do this or you're punished and all these things. And there's, it's just, there's a lot of punishment. Like, I remember when the first time I, put my, went to second base with a girl, like, I'm sitting across from the bishop, and he's like, God will not be mocked, Jimmy. You have to have this counsel. And so, shit, I just, screwed up at a moment of weakness, but okay.
For touching boobs?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can get in some real trouble. And it's a true story. The first time I put my hand down a girl's pants, I was 20-something, and I felt so terrible. I thought I was going to, like, this is a true story. This is a true, I know. I've worked through all my sexual trauma. Don't worry about it.
That's great. I'm not worried about you.
It's true. That's why I share it, because I want other people that are feeling these things to be able to have a place to go, wow, okay, like, this, I'm not crazy. But I literally went home that night. On my way home from the girl's house, I called my bishop. It was like 1 a.m, because I didn't want to crash and die before I had a chance to repent of it, so that I wouldn't, like, go to
burn.
And maybe that was, like, extreme, but in my mind, that was my reality, right? Because I literally was like, I can't risk this. I don't want to. I know, God bless me, I was a saint. And so anyway, so I think, like, I used to have this idea of, like, it's almost like you have to earn heaven. Like, and the problem with the whole problem that
your deeds, right?
Yeah, the whole problem, my whole problem with the Mormon Church at this point, and again, it's like, I have so much love for it because it helped create me, and I love who I am. So I actually really honor my heritage and everything that it was. Like, I give a lot of credit to it. But the biggest problem is, by its very nature, it needs you to feel broken so that you need it. And I don't refer to Christ as my savior. I don't think I need to be saved in that way, in the sense that, like, without him, I'm screwed. Like, I think if God's a perfect human, or perfect whatever God is, all knowing, all powerful, all loving, then you can't earn more of God's love. You can't screw it up. You can't earn more. You just are loved perfectly because God is perfect. And that's my belief around love. Now, I think that we can, by the karma of the energy of the universe, whatever we put out, we're going to get more of. I think in some way or shape, whatever we do, whatever good we put out, it'll find us somehow, or whatever bad we put out, it'll come back and find us somehow. But I believe that, like, God, we can't screw it up. So God just loves us. And when you know that you're loved, that you're enough, you don't have to earn it, you can screw up, it just changes everything as far as how you live your life. And so and so like now, like I said, I don't beat myself up. I don't have these weird thoughts or feelings if I, do something that was less than ideal, and I can give myself grace but yet I want more than ever to just love and do good. And it's not out of a place of fear. I don't want to do good out of fear. I want to do good out of love.
Yeah. It's not even out of maybe even thinking about missions, it's not out of duty. It's out of desire and delight, where it's like, I want to do this.
Right.
And that's so cool. Well, so that I can honor even plant medicine, because it has done good things in my life. What would be an experience? This will be, we'll kind of maybe wrap up and close with this, because I want to honor your time too. And
I want him
do
to
your
talk more
show.
about his shirt though, and the We Are the They.
Oh, I do. So we'll end with that. But
Yeah.
with plant medicine, what's something either you've been revealed about the divine or God in time, or whatever you want.
I'll give you a good one. It was that night you were there in Ayahuasca. I had a really profound experience. So I have a buddy, and he was like, hey, when I do plant medicine, I like to close my eyes and try to go have a conversation with Jesus. And I was like, well, that's cool. I'm going to try to do that. And so I did, and I'll be damned. I was like sitting at this river, and it was like me and Jesus. I could see his mouth moving like I'm talking to you. And it was like, I think that God speaks to us through whatever source we're willing to accept the information. I don't know if that's what it was
I
or
had
whatever.
some pop culture in mind. So
Yeah,
I was like,
fair enough. Like whatever it is. But I'm sitting there, and I remember having the profound thought, I'm like, Jesus is shorter than I thought. But it was like, it was that real. Like it was very, like I was there. It wasn't a prayer. Like I was there with him, and I had thoughts as he was speaking. And at one point, I'd been working so hard on this self-love journey. And there was and first I'll say this, like, so my first part of the conversation with Jesus, I asked him about this woman that I'd been hanging out with. I said, hey, should I pursue this? Is this something I should go after? And he looks at me, and and I'll never forget, it was the look in his face. He just was like, I don't know. Is that what you want? And then he goes, Jimmy, you haven't manifested it. And then he goes, you get everything that you manifest. Everything. He goes, in fact, you've never manifested it with a woman. So as soon as you're ready, just manifest it. And I was just like, that's kind of the whole knock and you shall receive. But it was just like, holy shit, that's really profound. And I was like laughing to myself. I'm like, yeah, I don't want it with that girl. I'm like, shoot, I haven't ever manifested it, So that was one really profound moment in that ayahuasca that I thought was just like so cool. And so actually this cross tattoo on my other finger is to remind me of that conversation with Jesus, that I get everything I manifest. That's what that means to me.
Wow.
And so, yeah, plus it's super taboo to have a cross finger on your Mormon hand. So that was kind of a fun way for me to do that. It's just no.
I love you, man.
I know.
Yeah. But anyway, that was one that I think stands out to me.
We are the they.
Yep.
And can you riff on that a bit?
Yeah. I love to tell this story. So I had the opportunity 5-6 years ago to work
Amy's going to pull that up for everyone watching.
Work with a group called Operation Underground Railroad, and we would go undercover.
Goodness, we talked about this morning.
Really?
Yeah, we did.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went on about 11, 12 ops with them. Was able to rescue over 100 kids and take down over 35 traffickers. And,
oh my God.
Yeah. And so when I was doing those ops, we would go undercover. This particular op was probably our most dangerous one, and we got back, and my girlfriend, picked me up from the airport, and we're driving home, and I start telling her the story. I mean, it was scary. These guys had, they were a very evil organization. This was the only one of all the takedowns I did where it was like a full-on organization around it. And she pulls over the car, and she goes, hey, look, like, I don't want you to do this anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is part of my life's mission now. And she goes, I know, but it's super dangerous. It's a bad environment. I just don't want you to go. I was like, I know, but I'm called to do this. And she goes, I know, but why can't they just go do it? And without even thinking, I go, there is no they. We are the they. And when I said that, I was like, oh shit, that's good. That's going to be a motto for life. And so it's, I got it tattooed on my arm as my first ever tattoo. And it's been my motto ever since. And so the whole premise is, again, we don't wait for other people to step up. Like when there's something that needs to be done, we just step in and we do it. We are the they.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when I started my coaching program, the obvious name to me was I wanted to do something with this, to brand it, to have it. And so when I launched it, that was the obvious name. We are the they.
Yeah. And so there's been people that have told me numerous times, and I think have wanted to connect me and Tim Ballard, right?
Yeah.
And
Through Fight for the Crown, we've seen like 1,651 people transition out of slavery and into freedom, and it's been incredible. But today, I woke up and I did the silly thing, like look at Instagram in the morning, and Tim had posted a video. I don't know if you saw it today, but
I didn't see it today.
Oh
He
my
posted something
gosh.
yesterday with like Mel Gibson. It was helping him with something. It was
yeah. But today he posted something, and he's the founder of our
Yep. Oh, you
rescue. Oh yeah, our Underground Railroad.
are. Operation Underground. Railroad.
Operation. And so, sorry, I just have the images in my head. I'm surprised that it was allowed to be even posted. That's what Amy said. But it's important for it to be posted. And I think this was with the Nazarene Fund that he does also, but it was somewhere in Africa, I believe. And it was called a baby factory.
Oh no.
And it had literally body parts just everywhere in this building, just piled up, legs, arms, torsos. And they were doing organ harvesting, and they were able to go in there and take them down, and like defeat this bad group that was like doing organ harvesting, sending stuff all around the world, but also with child trafficking and things. And it's like, oh man, like that is a calling, like what you said.
Well, dude, I'll put you on a text as soon as we're done with him, and you guys can connect. You guys need to connect. Yeah. There's no accidents like that. So
yeah, I would, and you having known him and been on there, close friend.
Yeah.
And he has a Mormon background as well.
He's still
right?
very active in the church.
Yeah. Well, man, doing such great things.
He's amazing. Yeah, no, there's a few organizations in Utah that have really taken to that cause, and I got a chance to work with all of them, with OUR, and there's one called the Child Liberation Foundation, the Nazarene Fund, some of these other groups, and it's been a special thing to be able to be a part of. I mean, you can't go on those ops and it doesn't change you, And,
yeah.
So.
Well, no, just with time, but the one thing I would ask is what was a story from one of these ops that was meaningful to you or to someone you helped?
Yeah, no, it's, they're all special in their own way. There was one in particular it was the one I was telling that girl about in my truck, but we were somewhere in Mexico, and we met these bad guys. We go down pretending to be the tourists. And so you end up meeting these people, and we met this guy that we were told was the biggest trafficker. And we'd met with a few other traffickers, and one of them, once he found out we were working with this guy, he said, oh, well, then I can't work with you guys. He's the guy that runs stuff here. And so we knew we had the right guy in town that was trafficking kids the most. Well, the next day, as we're setting up this op, he calls us and he says, hey, I want you to meet my boss. And we're like, aren't you the boss? And he's like, well, no, I have like the guy that's over all of this area. And so we go and we meet with this dude.
It's like the cartel?
It's not connected to cartel, no, but you're not sure, like at the time either. The cartel usually stays out of that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably kills people like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're meeting with this guy. It was an 18-minute conversation. I speak Spanish from my Mormon mission, which is kind of a cool thing that's kind of come back around where I was in Mexico for 2 years. And so I was able to have this conversation. There's 4 of us, but I'm the one that's having the conversation. I'm the only one that spoke Spanish with this evil dude. And for 18 minutes, we're sitting there pitching him on why he needs to work with us. And anyway, long story short, this guy, I mean, he had like middle school teachers that he was working with, because they have to have access to kids. And so he had them involved, and that's how they would get these kids drawn in and just these different things. And we were able to do that takedown and take him out and rescue that day 20 or 30 girls. And when we were taking him out, like I just knew how many future kids that particular op probably rescued, and we're hundreds, if not thousands, and watching him get arrested and taken away, and just knowing, like, we walked out of there because we set it up in a first meeting. We go down, we're setting up like a party to bring all the kids to. And when I got back from that, I was pretty scared. I was like, I told my buddy Travis, I'm like, I think I'm done with this. Like, it's pretty scary. And because if they were any inkling that we were anything but what we were saying, we were dead. I mean, they had their guys there, they had guns. We were in a dark place. I mean, it was.
Did y'all have guns?
No, you can't, because
you're in another nation.
The only thing you have is the fact that we're really good at talking. We're really good. We're making friends with these guys, and they believe us. That's our only defense. But anyway, and so when we actually went back 2 weeks later and did the takedown, it was just so satisfying, that particular one. And I was like, oh, man, I've got to support these causes for the rest of my life. And, I haven't been on an op in a couple of years now. I don't really go undercover anymore, but supporting them in every way that I can and every way I do, like even introducing someone like you to them is going to help them in some way. And so I try to help any way I can. But that was a special op just because it was like, I know how much good that did. Like if I did nothing else the whole time I was doing it, getting those dudes out of the way was super special.
Yeah, that's incredible work.
Yeah.
I'd love to have Tim on this show sometime. And then also, I do have a follow-up question, because sometimes I tell people what is going on in Africa, per se. Like literally people hunting, killing, cooking, and eating people,
Jeez.
The rebel groups, thinking that if they do that to the pygmies, that they'll be invincible in battle, that bullets will fly through them. Meeting people that, kids that have been given HIV, because the witch doctors tell people with HIV, if you sleep with a pygmy person or if you rape them, like you'll be cured of HIV.
Oh my gosh.
And, awful, terrible stuff. But I think people in our culture, our context, yes, there's bad stuff that happens here. And there's trafficking that happens here. But I think it's so out of sight, out of mind that people just tend to think that evil's not out there in the world, that they haven't seen it or experienced it firsthand. And in a lot of ways we're sheltered here. And so from those ops, how can you help people understand that like this is a real problem? I mean, even when it comes to slavery, there's more slaves on earth than ever in human history.
Right.
40 million plus.
Well, it's crazy. Like I look at right now, like, we know there's 1 million Uyghur slaves in China, and nobody like is doing anything. And it's like, it's
a literal Holocaust.
The NBA, like they want to talk about social justice here in the country, but they don't say shit about China. And it's like, you lost me when you just either pick a side or don't say anything, I guess. And it's like, they don't want to see it. They don't want to talk about it. It's like that op I just told you about. It's in a vacation town in Mexico. I'll just tell you. And I've been back there 3 times on vacation. You don't see anything if you're not looking for it. Like it's not in front of you, but this is going on all around us. But I don't know what the answer is. Like people have to get out of their way and like actually go to Africa. You went to Africa. I went to these countries. I went all over the world and did this. Like you have to actually go and be a part of these groups on the ground, I think, to really get it. Like I have a friend that just went to Ukraine to help with some of the war effort. Like your experience is going to be different. It's very easy to write a check, or it's very easy to sit back and complain on social media here in the US. And I don't know what the answer to that is, to be honest, but it's like people don't want to think about it. They don't want to think about there's 1 million slaves right now in China. Like nobody wants to talk about that.
It kind of goes with your shirt too. It's like, oh, it's their problem. Well,
Right.
it's our problem.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I had someone at a country music concert, and there was 2 organizations. One was a military organization, one was Fight for the Forgotten, and we do stuff in Africa. So a bunch of drunk rednecks came up to me afterwards, like literally spitting in my face, like cussing me out, saying like beer's flying. And I remember one older lady's spit came right inside my mouth, like inside my lip. And that's when all of a sudden I went from like peaceful to like, okay, now I'm mad.
Yeah.
But telling me, why would you help those kids over there? There's American kids. They're Caucasian, they're American, they're this and that, they're your own kind type stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, like I'm actually I can't believe this is happening.
Right. How are we even having this conversation?
But I guess in closing, I think what could be really cool is you riffing on or talking about the importance of, yes, evil happens, but there are good people that have to do good things and stand up to it.
Yeah. When that's, I learned how to talk about OUR and how to talk about these ops, because a lot of times I'd come back and I was all pumped and I'd tell people what's going on and they didn't want to hear it. And it really threw me off. It was it's a dark subject. And so we focus on the hope, we focus on the success of it, right? And there is so much good going on, and that's the part that I think is really cool. Like in a world where we are given opportunity to do good, and it's everywhere. And if you looked for those opportunities, you'll find them. And it's very easy to sit back and just wallow in your own stuff or whatever, really. But like there's a gift that God's given us that when we go and we serve other people, we will be our happiest. Like I served a 2-year Mormon mission. I'm not even part of that church anymore. That was probably as good a 2 years as I had, because all I did for 2 years was worried about other people. Like I did not do anything but help other people for 2 straight years. And I have so much love for that experience. So it's like anytime you get out of your own way And if you're feeling bad for yourself, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling negative, like you need to serve other people. That's how you get to the place of happiness. And so I think there's these opportunities that God gives us. And unfortunately, we're in a world where there's a lot of bad. There is a lot of negative. And, but honestly, like I think I'm more hopeful than ever.
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to find the good and find good people. And I see it everywhere, every single day.
Yeah.
So.
That's so good, man. Live to give.
Yeah.
Live to love. Love to live.
It's the secret to life, man. And Tony Robbins talks about that every day. Is like, the secret to life is literally in the giving. So,
yeah. Did you have something?
Nope.
We'll wrap up. I
Awesome.
love you, brother.
I love you too, man. Thank you
so much. This was incredible. This was one of my favorites.
How'd that alpha
You're one of
brain
my
treat
favorite
you?
people.
It must have been pretty good, right?
We
Got me
in the
more
flow of
emotional than I
conversation.
usually am, but maybe
Well, yeah, thank you to the sponsor of the show, On It and Alpha Brain, for helping us get into the flow of this conversation. I loved it. I feel on it and on top of it. And yeah, thank you, On It. If you guys want to support the sponsors of our show and support this show, you can go to onit.com/overcome, or you can use the code overcome at onit.com. Okay, Jimmy, how can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, I think so. I post everything through my Instagram. So like that's the best way to follow me is Mr. Jimmy Rex on Instagram. But my website is wearethetheymovement.com as well. But yeah, that's the best way to follow me. Anytime I'm speaking, anything I'm doing with whatever events or different stuff I got going on, I always post through Instagram. So I'd say that's the best place to follow me.
Okay, and it's Mr. MR, not all spelled out.
Correct,
Mr., right?
MR.
And then,
Jimmy Rex.
And then you can go to Amazon, get one of his 2 books, or get both of them. And if you are in the real estate world or investing world or entrepreneur, like Jimmy is going to be a guy. You just heard his heart. You know how genuine he is. He's going to be a guy you want to follow, and you'll love it, and you'll gain a lot of value from knowing and following, and hopefully meeting this man one day. So follow him on Instagram, and give this guy support, because I know him, and you've just heard him. He truly deserves that love and support back.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. I love you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. I love you too.
Hey, don't forget to send your Overcome stories to overcomepodcast@gmail.com. And also, rate, review, subscribe, and follow Overcome with Justin Wren.